Well, welcome to our I believe, November meeting. For a while there, we were almost going to have December already, but, Um, I was going to sing to you, but I've been requested not to because they don't even let me sing in the church choir. But there's an old song. There's a change in the weather and a change in the sea. So from now on, there's going to be a change in me. So there are many changes ahead, nationally and locally. The view from your window is going to be different this year. Probably every window is going to see something that they haven't seen before. We'll have traffic. We'll have elections, personal, available personnel, available services, and the list grows longer. Change, change, change. Is it all bad? No, no. We would look forward to the changes in the menu. If we did the same exercises every day, ugh, give it up after 10 days. So, unfortunately, some of us are not handling change as easily as others. Please be conscious of how your words and your behavior affects others. Yes, there are things to complain about. There's going to be a lot to complain about. But complaining is not going to change them. Your attitude is going to help change the response to change. Figure that one out. It's okay to complain, but it's not necessary or acceptable to be rude and mean. Remember, Santa is watching. So there's a big change in my life. No longer will I be chairman of RAC. The new board will be elected today, and the new chair will be elected at our December meeting. Thank you to all of the committees, the staff, and the residents for your support for the last 2 years. We have a wonderful community here. And now let's hear more about it.
Thank you, Ginger. And good afternoon. And my term as chairman of the Activities Committee is up. And I want to say it was a truly fun, great committee to be on. And next year, Sharon Rawls, co-chairman, will be chairman of the committee. And Kathleen Fisher is our past secretary. She's retiring, but she'll still be on the committee. Also like to thank the other members who will remain to finish out their term: Dolores Maxon, Al Sansabrino, and Jean Sansabrino. A special thanks to those who'll be retiring: Ramona Cole, Betty Colwell, David Marsh, Celine Pierce, and Fred Cox, and yours truly. New members will be announced at the January town hall. So just a few things to look forward to in December. Tomorrow is an interesting, I don't know if any one of you have heard about the donut dollies. Well, in 1968, a group of young women embraced their mission to cheer up the GIs in Vietnam. 47 years later, they reunite in Vietnam to retrace their steps and sharing the story for the first time. That will be here tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Returning with the Nutcracker, December 1st, is the Zerk Dance Ensemble. On the 5th is the the V Holiday Market in the living room. And let me read this about who will be here next Thursday, the 7th. It's the Ollie James Space Telescope, but you're not going to want to miss that Charles Holt's lecture on new discoveries from the first year of the James Webb Space Telescope. Charlie is a 50-year presenter for Ollie, which stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute out of Denver University. He uses much media support and will show us next Thursday that our universe is so much greater than just a few years ago. And come, even if you don't have any technical knowledge of this, you will enjoy it. On December 8th is the V Holiday Tour of Homes celebration. Visit model homes along with V Residence Homes. And it says December 18th, but it's really December 14th, is the Ugly Sweater Cocktail Hour. So you know what that means, wear whatever you can. On December 20th, Candlelight Carols with Jim Dalton. And on December 31st, Blue Suede New Year's Eve party. As usual, check your calendar for the other events, times, and locations, and sign up for any off-site events.
Hi, I'm Peter Nettelstein, co-chair. For us, Kathleen Fisher is completing her term of service this year, and we thank her for her service. We've been hearing a lot about the expansion of the care center. This is one picture. It's planned that Yo and his team will present a comprehensive presentation in January. But if you haven't driven by, I wanted to show this picture showing that indeed work is going on, and this is for the relocation of the sewer. Some highlights: the expansion of the dining room and game room is slated for early next year. The refresh of the lodge is virtually complete, and the refresh of the existing care center is ongoing, and that will match the decor of the expanded care center. Moving on to other topics, and Buildings and Ground does address a diversity of topics. I've been asked by Michelle that if you have an issue with regard to housekeeping and also facilities maintenance, it's much preferred for you to either do a voicemail to their helpline, do it on Touchtown, or ask a concierge to submit a work order request. Telling a technician or a housekeeper is not desirable, because the management of that department may not get the message. Switching gears, parking is a big issue. It continues to be a big issue. The parking on Ranch River Circle has always been on one side of the street. With the added vehicle traffic due to the construction, it's even more important to just park on the one side of the street. And then lastly, Kendall is now conducting nuts and bolts once a month. The last one, there were a large number of questions and getting into more details than can be provided at town halls. And so I encourage you to attend on December 19th. Thank you.
Tom wants to be at the end this time. I wonder why. So they've asked us to be brief, so I'm going to tell you about 3 things. We have a new allergen menu available if you are concerned. There are multiple lists on the grid that relate to the dishes that are on the menu. So hopefully you all take a look at that. If you have any feedback, send me a note. We have on Touchdown a new Culinary Corner tab. When you open up Touchdown and scroll a bit, you're going to see two things on that tab. One is the blog. So many people said that they could not get access to Chef Greg's blog. They requested multiple times, so if you want to read it, you can just go to that tab. And then when you open that tab, you'll see top of the tab is the blog, and under the tab is the menu for the Hive Market. Now, our experience so far is it doesn't appear Monday morning. Remember, Chef is busy with Culinary Corner at 10 o'clock, but it's pretty much up there by the afternoon, so take a look. It won't list what bread it is this week, if it's banana or cranberry, whatever. And then hopefully all of you have seen that the Hive Market has new hours, and they're posted as 10 to 4:30. But 4 o'clock is the last call because they want to close the door at 4:30. So if you haven't gone down there, please just go take a tour. Jessica is the clerk who will help you check out. You don't bring money, it's charged to your account. If you are a person who has leftover meal tickets, you can go down and spend them in the Hive and then freeze what you don't eat that day. If Josh, the chef, is present, he is delighted to have your feedback and your suggestions. Remember, Chef Greg told us when we started this, it's all going to change. It's the first time he's done this, and so we don't know what you all would like to see in the Hive. I am delighted that so far, when you get tuna fish salad in the Hive and egg salad in the Hive, you get no raw onions. So that's a big for me. So here's the list of the staff. Since we've been asked to be short, I'm just not going to read all the names. I'm happy to tell you about them. So the last thing I want to point out is that holidays are super busy for staff. And I know some of you are starting to get interested or agitated about what changes might be coming. We have a clear promise that we will have Christmas and New Year's events in our dining room. There is a very good possibility, not a promise, that the dining room may close in January. And then we will be doing buffets. Now, this is going to be a big change, and some of you are not going to be happy, so remember the Hive. And our own Ginger Clearup has agreed to be a liaison. She and Chef have worked well together for years. He listens to her, and she listens to him, and so they're going to be working out a lot of details. I'm going to ask you, there'll be a lot of things you want Chef to know in these months ahead. If it's ideas about how to do it better or a change, just email me as chair of Food and Beverage so we're not flooding Chef with a bunch of emails about, in February, it would be really nice to have. Just send those to me. You can write them and put them in the cubby room, or email, or you can call me. So while we're thinking about how busy everybody is, there's going to be a lot of events and parties. Some of them will be private parties. Some of them will be parties for committees. As people are leaving, family and friends will be visiting. There's going to be much FOMO, fear of missing out. And that makes people grumpy. So we have higher expectations for the holidays, and Grinches pop up, very grumpy. So please, if you're with somebody who's starting to get agitated, just ask them, is there something I could do to help with this? Could I get you some help? So that we don't get into sitting at a table where somebody is yelling or being really rude or mean to a staff member. So please give this some thought. This is supposed to be a season, whatever your cultural background is. I think every cultural group in the world thinks that there is a point of time in the winter where we're more kind to each other. So please, thank you.
I'll tell you to click. All right. Hello, I'm Tony Burris. Oh, thank you. I'm Tony Burris. I want to give an update on recycling. You know, the usual thing we talk about. First of all, let's all give ourselves a hand for the excellent compliance we've had with our new recycling initiative. All right? There have been no new recycle contamination penalties. All right? So that's good. Now, on to the next thing. You've probably noticed some new recycle bins. What am I doing? Oh.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes. Thank you.
Just trying to be helpful.
I know. Thank you, though. So you probably noticed some new recycle bins in the recycle room. And residents have asked, well, what goes where? Yeah? So we're going to get a label. Michelle is working up a label right now, and it's going to go on the gray bin. The gray bin will be for plastics. I think we all can do the subtraction. Everything else would go in the other bin. So the gray bin is for plastics. Pardon? That's the other. That goes in the other bin. Okay. Got any questions, any comments? Talk to me afterwards about this. We got to move along. So the other thing is cardboard. Break down your boxes if you can. If you can't, put them out of the way so they don't impede any access to the trash chute or to the room. And remember that our recycle is picked up twice a day, once in the morning and then in mid-afternoon. If you have a big cardboard box, like your TV came in it, or something large, and you can't get it down, contact housekeeping and they'll get it down there for you. To close now, I just want to show a view graph to reinforce what I just told you. We got it? There we go. So you can see the plastics will go in the gray, paper, glass, and metal in the blue. It shouldn't be bagged when you put it in the bins. Take it out of your bags. And then, this is a bad idea. Don't do that. All right, it's just a load of trash, and who knows what's in the bag, and it's piled on top of the recycle container. If nothing else, throw it in the trash. Because if that were contaminants, it would contaminate our load, and then there's a $500 penalty coming along. So that's all I've got. Again, if there are any kind of questions or anything that's really not clear, please see me or Deb after this. We'll be around, or see us in the hallways. Thank you.
Hey, Dick Sperry, Secretary of the RAC, and talking about employee appreciation. We met our goal, over $400,000. In large part due to a really nice memorial gift from the Van family. I'd like to read the letter that the kids wrote. To the employees of the V at Highlands Ranch, the children of the late Lee Van would like to sincerely thank the dedicated staff of the V for the countless ways they served our mother. We often witness many acts of kindness shown to our mom by the employees and knew she and our dad, Jim, appreciated them all. Consequently, please accept this financial token, this is a pretty good size one, of our gratefulness for ensuring that our mother's last years were happy ones. With warm regards, Debbie Gilreath, Jim Van III, Sherry Connolly, and Stephanie Moen. Thought that was very nice. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go forward into 2024, that if it's an appropriate memorial for somebody in your family, that's a great way to, give a little bit. Now, I'm going to take a few moments to talk about the Employee Appreciation Fund. Bear with me. We started this in about 2013, about 10 years ago, and it started by residents. Other V's have similar programs for their hourly employees. Your EAF checks are a gift, not taxable income to the employee, nor tax deductible to the resident. It's not a V management program, but unfortunately, some residents have equated the EAF program with management's challenges with dining and other employee departures, and have reduced their planned giving. As a result, impacting 200 plus hourly employee checks to some degree. Your RAC, Resident Advisor Council, manages the fund and sets the goal each year, so the new RAC will be setting one for 2024. The only management support we get is from V's HR lady, Suzanne Dobbs. She's very, very supportive, who provides the hours worked for each of the employees, accumulated by each employee through December 1st is our cutoff date this year, and works the equation multiplier for each employee's total hours worked to generate their check amount. The employee needs to be active employee on December 1st. Chair Ginger is kind of oversees this activity, and Treasurer Rachel Paul does the banking, and Vice Chair Carl, he's our computer wizard, helps print the checks. And I kind of support all of us. The four of us sign these checks, stuff envelopes, and get ready for the celebration. So, come and celebrate the V employees on Friday, December 15th, 2 p.m. in this room. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. I've got good heels on, so I can actually reach pretty well. So I'm going to do the community update slide instead of Yo, because you will hear him plenty today. So we're still at 100%. Thank you so much to sales. We're 100% sold. We are 96% occupied. So we've got the breakdown of men, women, and couples. Our care center, we've got a little wiggle room down there with 21 out of 22 and 11 out of 12 on memory support. We're still full on assisted living. So Peter talked about parking, and I've heard from several people and families, we had some parking challenges on Thanksgiving. I actually heard from the manager on duty that there were cars parked all over the fire lane up here and all over the fire lane and snow areas down by the care center. So a sheriff's deputy came over and enforced that fire lane, and people got ticketed on Thanksgiving and on the day after Thanksgiving. So that means we need our families and friends to stay out of the fire lane. This has become a bigger and bigger problem. They're parked right underneath the sign that says fire lane, no parking, and they've gotten used to doing that. So, wanted to do a quick review. So absolutely no to fire lanes. For our guests, of course they can park in our guest parking, that is fine. They can also, if that's full, which it usually is, they can certainly come around to the south side of the building and park in the employee lot and come in through that employee entrance. They are also permitted, thank you Peter for noting, down by the cottages, on the west side of the street is legal parking. The east side is not, that's a snow route. So that works for guests. For cottage residents, we've allowed you guys to come up and park in the guest parking when you're coming up to pick up mail, for events, things like that. That's fine. For lodge residents, please do not park in guest parking. Please do not park in the employee lot. I think many of you who do this are trying to save the efforts of valet because you're going to be coming and going a bit, but we know what to do with your car. We can put yours in the garage. You can tell us, I'm gonna go out again in an hour. That's great. We'll bring it back up in an hour. It's not a problem, but we know exactly what to do with your car. We don't know what to do with the guests, and they end up backing themselves up on the fire lane, and we're getting in trouble with the fire marshal, and now you guys are getting ticketed, and your families are. So if you could really help us out by messaging to your families and friends where they can park, that would be wonderful. Any questions on that? Okay. Yes, sir.
Are there maps or information showing how to get in from the employee entrance? Sometimes
In through the building? Let me talk and look into what kind of signage we could do on more of a long-term basis. I'm not a big fan of signs just hanging out in general, but something to make that process a little bit easier. Let me work with admin and building and grounds on that. Great question. Okay. Let me bring up Yo.
So I know, I've committed to change the picture. I still have 1 month, and I will get it done this year. I mean, it is a stark reminder that I am aware of. You might ask yourself, as I am right now, what's Yo doing here? I thought we were having the finance, kind of talking about the fee increase, and typically doesn't the director of accounting do that? And it's true. Typically it is the director of accounting. The director of accounting is on PTO, which was probably submitted maybe 6-9 months ago. And if you want to guess who approved that PTO, he's standing right here. And so as it relates to Tom's lack of presence, it is my fault, but I hope I will do him a solid on explaining what we're all here to hear today. You know, I think a lot of people just get to it. So we will be getting to it, and that's going to be my job today. Clicker, do we have that one? There we go. Perfect. So I think I want to start off by just saying briefly, this will be my 14th budget with this company, right? I remember in the earlier years, it was overwhelming. I wasn't sure how to get this done, but I thought to myself, you know what? Keep on doing this, I'll get better at it, and I'll figure this thing out, you know, and I'll be efficient with it, and it's going to get easier. I'm here to tell you it hasn't. Budgets, it's remarkable. And I want to start out by saying the amount of time that not just the finance committee, but other residents, management here, Tom Pluta specifically, spends on this budget every year. I'm not sure if you'd believe it if we tried to illustrate how much time that is. What my experience has been with budgets is that you think you have it figured out, and every year there's some new challenge that I never could have predicted, I've never dealt with before, and so here's our job to figure out how we can deal with it. So I want to publicly just say thank you to Finance Committee and also to management, to Tom Pluta, the team here, for the efforts that again went into this preparation of the budget. You know, we're coming out of a difficult period in our life as a community, but I feel like everybody has the right goal in mind as it relates to where we want to go. And so hopefully this presentation will reflect that to all of you. So I know we have a lot of new residents, and typically what Tom likes to do is kind of walk through, what is our process. I might do it a little bit quicker, but I think it's important for individuals maybe that are not familiar with budgets for a business to understand, how does this even work? So the way this works in October, we have 10 months of data for the year, right? Our actual financial picture month over month. And so as we were here in October, we looked at our year-to-date operating deficit, which was $167,000. We had a COS, or operating surplus, of $1.3 million. Now, the contributing factors to this deficit we had revenue that was above budget by $127,000. And I think people walk around and they realize, yeah, there's more people here. You know, independent living, there's not as many vacant apartments. And as I go through the occupancy every month on the care center, you've seen that there's been more occupancy down there also. So there's been an increase, and so that will be reflected in here. And the Medicare is also, we've had some positive variances on the Medicare. On the expense side, we were 26,000 over budget. And so we also had some non-operating items, things we can't really control: interest income, ordinary expenses, and contributions to capital, which was also above budget. So you might sit there and you go, wait a second, you're telling me all these numbers. At the end of the day, we're negative $167,000. What is important to point out is that that's better than what we actually thought we were going to be at that point. So we have the data, and then we are always doing projections. We're trying to forecast, project, what does the future look like? So with the data that we had at the time, we made some projections, and we said we were looking at having around 39 move-ins into IL, which has put us to about 96.8% occupancy. Our deficits will be between 267 and 367. Our COS between 1.4, 1.5 to round off. And as we look at this, we also need to factor in the fact that we have been running a deficit year over year during the pandemic. I do know that Tom Atkins is going to talk a little bit about that, but it's kind of extraordinary that that debt is actually carried by the company. And so he will talk a little bit more about that. And we've also been given the grace in maintaining our surplus on the COS, where we have established a minimum of 2%. So that stays true. So the process works this way. We get a file in the beginning, mid-September. It has some assumptions in it. The corporate, we use Milliman, for example, as one of the companies that looks at our actuarials, looking at average age and so forth and so on. So they put some assumptions in as it relates to move-in and move-outs. A lot of that is also derived from our history. The tweaks on history we make here, they kind of factor more off of Milliman. And so the assumptions on move-ins and move-outs and merit increases for staff are kind of the big numbers that can change the picture drastically. And so we get these assumptions, and Tom and I will sit down and we'll look at the history, and we've met with Finance Committee, so maybe we agree to it, maybe we don't agree with it, but we start inviting each director into the office. And then we go through each department, and the director actually gets to sit down and present their budget for their department, and we get to talk about it. At this point, we're also looking at what we call the Q mix, or the occupancy in the care center, which Tom, I think, over the years has illustrated. It's kind of complicated, but with Medicare, there's a certain amount of revenue you get. With other providers, there's different revenues. And so we try to figure out, and this is just the best guess, how many Medicare patients are we going to have? How many other commercial HMO? How many life care patients are going to be there? So that goes into kind of this process of trying to estimate. And we're also looking at all the services, ancillary services, and revenues and costs associated with them. We also look at staffing levels, and so you will see in our budget for next year, there's some changes to staffing levels, and I'm going to point those out to you. And some of those are actually feedback from residents here. One of them has to do with technology and IT, and so that's where these things will be factored into the budget. After all this has been done, the CIRR management fee has been factored in, and there's a slide here to kind of illustrate what piece of the pie. You know, I'm trying to mimic Tom here a little bit on a visual to illustrate what are the controllable and the non-controllable expenses, and so that will give you an appreciation for what it is that we're actually really focusing in on as it relates to the revenue and expenses and the solvency of the community. During this process, we meet with Finance Committee, right? I was a young executive director, and I thought it was the craziest thing ever to go to our customer and say, here's our budget, what do you think? But that's what we've done, and that transparency has been very beneficial for me in my career with Lee, because I learned a lot from the various members on the Finance Committee. So they have full access to look at what it is we're thinking, they make recommendations, and at the end of the day, as you all know, there is no opportunity for them to demand. They are there as advisory, and we try to come. Sometimes we don't always agree, but it's great to have that conversation, and sometimes we compromise, and sometimes we don't. But to have that relationship has really also been beneficial for us. So multiple meetings with the Finance Committee, and then corporate also. We have a couple of meetings where the various departments at the corporate level will vet our numbers and ask questions. So let's look at a kind of 10,000-foot overview of the 2024 summary of the budget and what we're thinking. So our average, on the revenue side, our average IL occupancy is going to be 96% for all of next year. That's high occupancy. We will actually end the year, based on our budget, at 96.4. What that kind of equates to is about 5,000 days increase from the 2023 budget. Again, that equates to about 14 residents. We're having a slight care center reduction from our 2023 budget. That is a function of just experience and what we're going through in the care center. We will not have the same opportunities as we've had previously, but with the end goal of having a lot more of opportunities when the expansion is completed. So there's a reduction there on the revenue side. And then we factored in a 3% ancillary pricing for increase for meal charges, bar charges, room charges, and meal credits. That is something we have not really touched in years, and so we felt like that was the right time to do that now. On the expense side, what the 2024 budget anticipates, the salaries is the big driver. There's an increase of 9% from 2023 on our salaries. Part of that is not just increase. If you see below here, we have some new FTEs. We have added some FTEs to dining. We've added some FTEs to housekeeping. They reflect occupancy, care center nursing, and we need to define the role, but we call it, I guess in this slide, IT help, but an IT individual that will be local to each community. It's something that's been talked about for several years. We have graciously had a committee here that has kind of filled that void for us. But the way I envision this moving forward is that will be a partnership between that individual and the tech help. If they still want to exist, we would love for them to exist. But more to come on that position. Then you have the merit increases for the staff, and then the benefits went up 10%, so all our benefits from 2023. We did, on the expense side, just kind of a global 3.5%. That could be argued, I guess some higher, some lower, but here are the departments that we applied the 3.5% increase to. And this slide I like. So when you look at the budget here, and we'll go on the left side first, on the income. So you see the monthly fees are 93% of our revenue at the community. The Medicare/insurance, healthcare is 4%, and then ancillary and others are 3%. You look at the expense side, controlled expenses are 81%. They are salaries and benefits of 60%, and on the non-personnel, 21%, and the non-controllable equates to 19%. So you then see what kind of an impact financially it will have when you have those increases on the salary, which is 60% of our expenses. So it just gives you a snapshot of kind of what are the drivers here in the picture and what kind of an impact it actually does make when you make changes on the various departments. So here are the key takeaways. As it relates to our financial operations, and I think everybody is seeing it, they are improving. They're actually going where we expect them to go. And I know throughout the process there are people wondering how are we going to get back. But if there's one thing that this community has done better than the other 9 communities that did experience a dip in occupancy during the pandemic, is the rate of recovery. We did have some communities that didn't have any sort of material decrease. And as Tom pointed out, and I loved when you pointed this out 3 months ago, Tom, he said, based on Finance Committee's impression, by the mere fact that our reduction in occupancy, lack of revenue happened, we had to go back and retool our expense side, right? We had to start getting real efficient, so it forced us to have this opportunity, which you saw earlier, where we're below expenses. But it was because of that experience. Other peers of mine that I talked to that have been struggling with the budget never went through the experience of trying to trim and trying to figure out where are the lack of efficiencies here. And so in that way, although it sounds, as weird as it sounds, the dip in occupancy actually, I think, was beneficial for our long-term sustainability. And so I was pleased to see that the community and all the directors reacted the way they did when the notice was given that let's try to sharpen the tool a little bit. So the key takeaways, it's the increase in the days and the revenue. as I mentioned earlier, salary and benefits, they're becoming a larger part of our operating budget, which is not something we necessarily would like to see, but it's a function of our environment at this point. Inflation is improved from last year, but there are some segments of the data, like salary and benefits, that are at least double the local overall inflation rate. So with the improved financial operations that we are currently experiencing and the direction we're going in, we feel it's prudent to aim for a margin neutral budget. In years past, we have had the opportunity to be in the negative, but we have decided that is not something we want to continue doing. And the last thing I'll say before Tom gets to talk a little bit is that this margin neutral budget that we have put together, the monthly fee increase is less than it was last year. So I'll start with that. I'll let Tom talk a little bit, and then it will be back to me. So yeah, Tom, you're up.
Oh, thanks a lot, put me on the bubble. Let me get started with a little perspective before I get into my actual presentation on the situation here, because inflation has been in all of our minds for the past year or two. And right now, we're all feeling pretty good when we read the newspaper, because they're telling us that inflation is down to 3%. I don't know about you, but when I go to the store, I'm not seeing that. So we dig a little bit deeper than that. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually publishes the inflation rate for the Denver, Lakewood, Aurora area, which is 5.4%. That's a little bit more like it, but when you dig even deeper into their numbers, the services inflation rate in the Denver, Lakewood, Aurora area is 8.6%. Now, when you think about labor being, Yost said it was roughly 60%. It's this year to date, right now, we're closer to 70% of our operating expenses is salaries and benefits. He wasn't adding benefits, but salaries and benefits together are close to 70% of our operating expenses. So these are a big part of our costs here. And also food. Food in the Denver area is way up. Inflation in Colorado, food inflation is 11% this year. And there was recently an article in USA Today on restaurant prices. Colorado leads the nation in increased restaurant prices, 24%, first in the nation. So that's just a little background to keep in mind when we think about our finances. So let me talk about our status now. Let's start with where we are. Yo already gave you a couple of the numbers here, but I want to go a little bit deeper. Over the past 3 years, we have accumulated deficits between operating and capital of about $2 million. Yo showed you on the screen about $1.3 million, but when you add the capital deficit that we have right now, we're at about $2 million in deficits. Chicago is carrying that as a no-interest loan. If we had to pay that with a loan, a commercial loan at 1% over prime, it would be costing us the equivalent of 1.5% of our resident fees every year for 10 years to pay that back. So the good news here, we have a good base going forward of sales. So from an operating standpoint, we're comfortable with that the sales are going to cover expenses. So that's our good base. But there is a plan to get out of this hole. So we have a $2 million hole that we've dug into. And there is a plan to get out of that hole and back into financial health. And that plan involves the care center. Chicago is investing $15 million to expand that care center. The financial benefits of that, we know the healthcare benefits of expanding the care center, and we need those. But there are financial benefits to expanding the care center, and those accrue directly into our operations, not Chicago's, except for the fact that they're getting management fees from us. So they understand that they're getting revenue out of this too. And that revenue is being used to pay off deficits and restore our surpluses and hold down future resident fee increases. So let's think about this for a minute. V is a for-profit corporation. Okay? They are not spending this kind of money out of the goodness of their heart. Okay? Yes, they know that the care center needs expansion. Nonetheless, they're spending a lot of money right now and carrying $2 million of our debt in a high interest rate environment with high capital costs. Okay? Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they know it's a good financial investment. So, and in Finance Committee, we're sitting there going, they must know this is a good financial investment, but we need to see. Okay? We want to see that because the residents are going to want to know that. So we do a deep dive into these numbers. And what we did was we did a 10-year analysis of our finances with the care center expansion. We looked at everything we could. We wanted to evaluate the feasibility of the approach. We wanted to evaluate its impact on our fees in the future. We wanted to evaluate other potential benefits to residents, and we varied everything we could think of. We varied fee increases, we varied inflation rates, we varied occupancy, we varied care center occupancy, we varied care center expenses. And we didn't just make up numbers doing this, okay? We put together a set of conservative assumptions that we then vetted with Tom Pluta and with Yo. And Yo personally has a lot of experience even before he came to Highlands Ranch with operating care center properties. So we even got them to provide some of the assumptions for us. Clearly, the way this is going to work is that we're going to bring some non-residents into the expanded care center for Medicare and private pay patients. These pay between $450 and $600 a day in revenue. And in looking at this forecast, we made very conservative assumptions. There are going to be 23 new rooms in the care center. We assumed a commitment of no more than 7 of those rooms for non-residents, and we assumed none of them for assisted living or memory support. Now, that's not to say they couldn't be available, but the assumption is we don't have to have space because those areas are the ones that are in highest demand for life care. The result was really, really positive. And it illustrates why I think Chicago is willing to spend the money and carry our capital debt. Our forecasts show, even with the most conservative assumptions, that our capital fund deficit will be paid off within 2 years of the care center expansion opening. Right now, by the way, Yo showed we have an operating deficit of about $1.3 million. We have a capital deficit right now of $600,000, and that's going to increase. And we showed that we'll have a sufficient balance in the reserve fund at the end of that 10 years for the next major refresh of the lodge. So that's a big deal. For operating, our $2 million debt, our analysis showed will be paid off within 4 years. That means the capital debt has been paid off within 2 years, and the operating deficit plus capital will totally be paid off within 4 years. And the surpluses are going to begin holding down resident fee increases very shortly after the expansion opens and we bring outside residents in. So let me just summarize the situation. We're sitting here with $2 million of deficit, and we have a transition period to get through. We know that from our analysis that the Finance Committee has done that the outlook is really good. It's really positive for us financially. But we have to get from here to there. There's a transition. There's a transition for Chicago. They're putting up the bulk of all their construction funding, and they're financing our deficit, and we're spending $3 million to upgrade the existing care center, the rooms and facilities, to match the quality of the expanded care center, because none of us here want a situation when the new wing opens where there are good rooms and bad rooms. We want a care center that it doesn't matter where we are, it's all gonna be good. So we've already spent pushing $1 million of that $3 million upgrading the rooms and facilities inside the care center. We're going to spend more than $2 million in excess, but that's got to come out of our budget. Okay. The good news here is that because of our sales, we're confident, as Yo concluded at the bottom of his remarks, that management can operate this place at a, quote, margin neutral budget, meaning we're not going to be digging the hole any deeper in this transition period. So, in the end, we pay off all of our deficits within 4 years. Our capital reserve balance is ready for the next 10-year refresh at the end of that 10-year period, and our financial house is fully back in order. So the Finance Committee's conclusion is that the fee increase that management is proposing will get us through this transition year without further increasing our deficits, and keep us healthy. And that's the end of my prepared presentation. And just to go off script a little, the way I like to think about this is that the pandemic was a hole that we fell into, and we got injured. I mean, we got injured falling into that hole, but it wasn't a permanent injury. It was, we broke a leg, okay? We got injured. And Chicago, in carrying our deficits, they have provided us with the wheelchair we needed and with the walker we needed to get through that period of recovery from that injury. Okay? And they've provided us with a good financial future that we have ahead of us. But now we have to give up the walker. Okay? We got to walk. So we have a period of transition where we're not going to have the reduced resident fee increases that the expanded care center is going to provide us. And it'll be a little less comfortable, but we got to walk on our own this coming year. And I'm ready. I think we get off of that walker before you know it. We're going to be running sprints, and I'm ready for it. And I hope you are too. So let's.
Thanks, Tom, for an in-depth kind of, I guess, presentation analysis. Thank you for everyone for showing up today. We'll see you in January. No. That was a poor joke, but let's get to my next slide. Yes, Ginger?
I need to have an election.
Oh, yeah, no, and I have some.
I'm out of this.
Okay, I have some more slides to show too. The numbers here. Let me summarize it. Let me, this is 2 slides. So our final thoughts, we feel it's a reasonable budget. It illustrates a drastic improvement in census and revenue. Operating expenses reflect what is necessary to operate next year, considering staffing and an inflationary, see, that's how you can tell I'm foreign, pressures. And then I've had questions about this. I just wanted to point this out. So the impact of the care center expansion, we're going to build a different budget for that. We're not going to roll that into our operating budget. Why do you say? It would compromise the budget we have already, which is built since 2008. So we want to run them parallel. Finance committee will have access. We don't have those yet, but that's how we decided to treat this, is that we contemplate next year as if the care center is not happening. And that's just to have integrity in the numbers. So with all that being said, 2024 budget assumptions, for us to achieve the budget bottom line for 2024, a 6.25 monthly fee increase will be in place effective 1/1/2024. After this meeting, actually during this meeting, the memo has gone out to all the mailboxes from us. We also need to provide this in writing 30 days before the end of the year. And they will also go out to family members that are representatives of residents in the care center. I heard a couple of OGs, and I feel the same way. It's not what I am used to, right? We had a pretty steep fee increase last year also. I'm not going to stand here and apologize for why it is the way it is, because I am so confident in not just in the expertise of Finance Committee and management here, but also in the fact that we all have the purpose of trying to make it the best we can for the resident and the employees. That's my message to my employees, and I know that's the message that the committees are sharing with you guys when it comes to what they do on a volunteering basis for the residents here. As long as that is our driving motivator, if that's what drives us to do the things we're doing, we're going to be okay. And so Tom alluded to it, and I have to be a lot more careful than what Tom can be, right? He gave you a 10-year plan, which he and some others have worked on. And what am I here to tell you is that 10-year plan, I think, as mentioned, is conservative. And we're going to be surprised by how quickly things will turn around. But I can't say that yet. So I kind of said it, but I didn't. So if you have additional questions or clarifications, Finance Committee is a good place to go. But it's also a good place to come to Yo. I invite people to come to my office, and with Tom Pluta, I'm speaking for him today because he might be in Disneyland in Orlando right now. I'm not sure where he is, but I think for those of you that have taken the opportunity to come and visit with us and say, listen, this just doesn't make any sense based on my experience, have walked away and said, hey, that experience was different than what I thought it was going to be. And so we welcome a partnership in all that we do, and hopefully you will take me up on that so it's not just lip service. So with that being said, I look forward to the holidays. I look forward to spending some more time here with you guys, and it's going to be a good end of the year. Thank you, everyone. Ginger.
Okay, what do you have coming up?
This is it, so it's you now.
This is it. This is the end.
It's Ginger time. Yep.
Okay.
You can dance and tell jokes. You can even sing.
No. No, first of all, we have to have our election. Now, we have a committee called RAC. It's the Resident Advisory Council. The A word is the important one. It is the liaison between residents and management. So every year, there are 7 people who serve on that committee. The meetings are also attended by the committee chairs. Each year, we replace either 3 one year or 4 the next year, until something happens where someone says, I'm not serving a second term, so then we have to do 5 this year. The bylaws state that any eligible resident may nominate himself or herself as a candidate. Crickets, nothing. So the nominating committee got together. That would be our vice chair and our secretary, Carl Faulkner and Dick Sperry, and put together a list of 25 residents that they felt would be a good representation of the population to serve on this committee. They interviewed 25 people and had several that were, I'll think about it. More than one was, not on your life. And had a couple who thought that they would, yes, be on the committee, and then looked further at what the job would entail and decided, no, that's not what I want to be doing next year. Now, eventually, they settled on a slate of 5 people. You have met those people last month. You have read their bios that were in your cubbies. And according to the bylaws, if we have a slate, we don't have to have a written ballot. Count your blessings. That's a major pain. So, the election committee will proceed with a slate of candidates we have, if I look at the right piece of paper, Mary Pine Blankston, Tom Burris, Peter Hadges, Mary Alice Jordan Marsh, and Debbie Zelkowitz on the slate. Yes, Mr. Faulkner. It has been acclaimed that these people be elected. I would like to say, as the chair of the committee, the RAC committee, that the committee approves this slate, and therefore we welcome our new 2024 RAC committee. Would you please stand? And now you get your joke. Elizabeth? We have a guest presenter. Tony, I'm sorry.
Can I lift this up? Okay. I've lived here for about 11 years, but before that, I lived down in Durango. And I had a friend call me from Durango, Ralph, and he said, I have a story to tell you. I said, okay. Anyway, he said, I was driving into town to get supplies and groceries the other day, and instead of going down 550, I decided to go down 203. It's a more rural, picturesque road. So he drives down the road, and he sees this sign on the side of the road. It says, "Talking dog for sale." Now, he continues into town and gets his groceries and goes to Ace Hardware or whatever else he needed to get. And he comes back and he said, "I think I'll go up 203 again." And he comes along and he says, "There's that sign again." Well, he says, "This is ridiculous." Really? I can't help it. I'm going to turn in there and go see what this is about. So he goes in, drives down the road, comes up to the house, gets out of the car, goes up to the door. The man comes to the door. He says, "Yep, what do you want?" He said, "I'd really like to see the dog." "Oh, the dog, yeah, he's around back." He goes to leave, and then he says, "What's the dog's name?" "The dog's name is Jake." So anyway, he goes around back, and there he's laying. He's a beautiful black lab, gorgeous black lab. He's all stretched out there. Anyway, he goes up to him, looks at him, and says, "Hi, Jake." Well, Jake stretches. Oh, it feels so good. Opens his eyes and says, "What?" With that, as he closes his mouth and steps back a few, and he says, and Jake looks at him and says, "Well, I think you want to know about me, so here's my story. When they found out I could talk, I was taken to all kinds of meetings, secretly snuck in there, very clandestine, so I could listen to what was going on and then come back and really report what was said. I did this with the government for a number of years, about 8. Then, after I retired from that, I decided that I would find a mate and have some puppies, so we had puppies. That went on for a few years. But now I'm totally retired, and I just lay out here in the yard. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful." So Ralph says to himself, "I can't believe this." Anyway, he goes back up to the house. On the door, the guy comes to the front door, and the guy, Ralph says to him, he said, "I really would like to buy this dog." And the guy looks at him and he says, "Are you kidding me? He didn't do any of those things. He lies, lies, lies."
We will see you all in January. There is no December town hall. You get a month off. Thank you for coming.